We will now call the business session of the September 7, 2021 meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. All council members are present, except for Councilmember Palmer. Welcome to all guests and visitors. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during a hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation, regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside the auditorium so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item of business is to consider the minutes of the August 17th and August 31st City Council meetings. There were minutes provided to you in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections? If there are none, then the minutes will stand approved as submitted, and we will move on to our first public hearing, which is public hearing 2021-569. And I believe that our city attorney, Jennifer Ritchie, will be reading this ordinance.
This is a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed tax rate of 0.767282 per $100 valuation for the City of Waco fiscal year 2021-22, which includes 0.126888 for $100 valuation to pay debt service and 0.640394 for $100 valuation to fund maintenance and operation expenditures.
Are there any questions for staff? If there are none, then we will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
And I'll remind council there is specific motion language at your place.
I make a motion that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $0.767282 per $100 valuation, which is effectively a 3.45% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries.
And Mayor, this will come for a second reading in front of y'all tonight, and it's a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed tax rate of 0.767282 per $100 valuation for the City of Waco fiscal year 2021-22, which includes 0.126888 per $100 valuation to pay debt service and 0.640394 per $100 valuation to fund maintenance and operation expenditures.
Is there a motion?
I move that the property, do we use the same?
Yes,
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $0.767282 per $100 valuation, which is effectively a 3.45% increase in the tax rate.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries. And the next public hearing, the next item is public hearing 2021-570.
Thank you, council members. This is a public hearing to consider an ordinance approving and adopting a service and assessment plan for Public Improvement District Number 1, including the annual budget and assessment role for providing improvements and/or services for fiscal year 21-22, making provisions for the levying of assessments against property in the district and owners thereof, fixing charges and liens against property in the district and the owners thereof, providing for the collection of such assessments, enacting other provisions related thereto, reserving unto the City Council the authority to reduce such assessments based on credits established by City Council, directing that all required procedures be followed in accordance with Chapter 372 the local government code, providing for a savings clause, and finding and determining that a meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you as a first reading. On August 11, 2021, the Advisory Board for PID 1 approved recommendation to the City Council of the proposed service plan for fiscal year 21-22 for PID 1, which includes the proposed services, budget, and assessment plan for the 21-22 fiscal year. The total proposed budget for 21-22 fiscal year for PID 1 is $1,720,420, with $683,403 designated for programs, services, and administration in 21-22. $274,301 designated for operating reserve, and $751,716 designated for future capital improvements. As required by law, a copy of the service and assessment plan, including budget and assessment roll, was filed with City Secretary's office on August 16, 2021, and also published on the city website. Notice of this public hearing was mailed to property owners in PID 1 on August 17, 2021, and published in the Waco Tribune-Herald on August 22nd, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? We will open up a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sevito.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-571.
Thank you. This is a public hearing to consider an ordinance approving and adopted an updated service plan and assessment plan for Waco Improvement District 2, including the annual budget, assessment plan, and assessment roll for fiscal year 21-22, making provisions for the levying of special assessments for improvement costs and annual administrative expenses, assessments on certain property in Public Improvement District Number 2 and the owners thereof, fixing charges and liens against property in Public Improvement District Number 2 and the owners thereof, providing for the collection of such assessments, enacting other provisions relating thereto, reserving unto the council the authority to reduce such assessments based on credits established by City Council, directing that all required procedures be followed in accordance with Chapter 372 of the Local Government Code, providing a savings clause, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you as a first reading. Waco's Public Improvement District Number 2 was first established in August 2003. PID 2 was established specifically for the purpose of paying for the annual bond payments through the annual assessment plan for drainage facilities constructed to provide for the commercial construction development that have already occurred on properties located in PID 2. The proposed assessment plan for the fiscal year 21-22 for PID 2 is as follows: $181,490 for infrastructure improvement assessment, $5,000 for administrative expense assessment, for a total of $186,490. Assessments are divided on a per square foot basis among the properties in PID 2. As required by law, a copy of the updated service and assessment plan, including the budget, assessment plan, and assessment roll, was filed with City Secretary's office on August 16, 2021, and was posted on the city website. Notice of this public hearing was also mailed to property owners in PID 2 on August 17, 2021, and was published in the Waco Tribune-Herald on August 22, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for staff? If not, we will open a public hearing. Is there anyone to speak on this item? I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move for approval on first reading.
Discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Fairfield. Yes. Sevito.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. Motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-572.
Honorable members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas, and the annexation and designation of urban residential as the comprehensive land use designation and the designation of R1B single-family residence district zoning of certain territory described as being a 56.1 acres of land, more or less situated in and being out of the BB and B and C Railroad Company survey, abstract number 157, McLennan County, Texas, and being part of a called 194.45 acre tract described in the deed to WBW Single Land Investment LLC. Series 104, recorded in document number 2019-02-8303 of the official public records in McLennan County, Texas, and being located near the intersection of Warren Road and Ritchie Road, and further located within Waco's extraterritorial jurisdiction, which said territory lies adjacent to and adjoins the present boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas. Assigning the annexed territory to the City Council District 3, amending the City of Waco Precinct 55 to include the annexed territory, directing that the city precinct district map be revised to reflect that change, and providing voting locations at any City of Waco vote center, providing that said territory bears pro rata part of taxes and entitling inhabitants to all rights and privileges of the city, and binding inhabitants to all acts and laws of the city, adopting a service plan, providing a severability clause, providing for publishing of the ordinance, providing penalty therefore, and finding a term at the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 10-0, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the voluntary annexation, the designation of urban residential as a comprehensive plan land use designation, and designation of R1B single-family residence district zoning.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? We will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone to speak on this item? If not, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield. Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
That motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-573.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas, and annexation and designation of suburban residential as a comprehensive plan, a land use designation, and the designation of R1A single-family resident district, and planning and development zoning of certain territory consisting of the following described tracts. Number one, a 251.06 acre tract of land located in the Archibald Heron Survey, Abstract 404, and the Aaron Cullen Survey, Abstract 237, McLennan County, Texas, and being all of the called 193 acre tract of land to Gerald Farr, listed in probate recorded in McLennan County Clerk's document 2018-01-0601 of the official public records in McLennan County, Texas, and describes in a meets and bounds as fourth tract, all that tract 25.5 acre tract of land to Gerald Farr, listed in a probate recorded in MCCD 2018-010-0601 of the OPR MCT, and described in meets and bounds as tracts 5 and part of that called 218 acre land tract of land, all in a deed to WW Diley, as recorded in volume 127, page 302 of the deed records in McLennan County, Texas, and two 109.819 acre tract of land located in Lorenzo Day Bragg Survey, Abstract 101, McLennan County, Texas, being all of the called 109.8 acre tract of land and a deed to Cooper's Real Estate Investment Corporation, as recorded in MCCD 2007-00942 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas. And three, a 37.983 acre tract of land located in the Aaron Cullen Survey, Abstract 237, McLennan County, Texas, being part of a called 218 acre tract of land to Gerald Farr, listed in a probate recorded in MCCD 2018-01-0601 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, and described by meets and bounds in a deed to WW Dealery, as recorded in volume 143, page 626 of the deed records of McLennan County, Texas. Four, a 40.696 acre tract of land located in the Aaron Cullen Survey, Abstract 237, being all of a called 40.735 acre tract of land described in a deed to the city of McGregor, as recorded in McLennan County Clerk's document 2004-043-847 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas. And five, a 2.752 acre tract of land located in the Archibald Heron Survey, Abstract 404, and the Benjamin J. Baxter Survey, Abstract 102, being a portion of Valverde Road. Said territory being located along or near the east side of Valverde Road and including the adjacent Valverde Road right-of-way. And further located within Waco's extraterritorial jurisdiction, which said territory lies adjacent to and adjoins the present boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas. creating a plan unit development on the PUD property, approving the concept plan for the PUD, assigning the annexed territory to the City Council District 5, establishing City of Waco Precinct 78, which will consist of the annexed territory, directing that the city precincts district map be revised to reflect that change, and providing voting locations at any City of Waco vote center, providing that said territory bears pro rata parts of taxes entitling inhabitants to all rights and privileges of citizens, and binding inhabitants to acts and laws of the city. Adopting a service plan, providing a severability clause, providing for publishing of an ordinance, providing penalties therefore, and finding the term of the meeting which this ordinance is passed is open to the public required by law. By a vote of 10-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the voluntary annexation, the designation of suburban residential as a comprehensive plan land use designation, and the designation of R1A single-family residence district and plan unit development zoning.
Whew. Clint, any questions for staff?
I think his mic was off. Can you repeat this, the middle part?
We have, I'll open the public hearing. We have several cards on this item. The first is Mr. King Cooper. I think it just says that you're just available for any questions. Is that right? Any questions for Mr. Cooper? If not, then we will move on to, we have several cards, and Clint, you might stay close because I think they're going to have, it looks like there's questions regarding this that hopefully our staff will be able to help answer. The next card I have is, I might mispronounce this, but I think it's George Egerts. Great, thanks. You want us to come up? Sure, if you could just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Hello. George Agats, located at 361 Valverde Road, and then also 365 Valverde Road, both locations.
Great.
So, really just had a concern with regard to the right-of-way on the roadway itself and where that lies. We weren't provided any information as to when it said both sides right-of-way. Our property abuts the, I guess it would be considered maybe the west side, would that be considered? Yeah, I think the west side. So I had a concern with regard to the width of the right-of-way and what the actual plan was for that right-of-way down the road.
Great.
And then also a little bit of concern with the water, you know.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there any staff that has answers to those questions at this time? Clint, is that something you might be able to field?
So the annexation does include Valverde right-of-way adjacent to the property, which is a requirement of state law. So what that means is that will become a city street instead of a county road.
Good.
So it would be maintained by the city after this annexation is approved.
Any implications to the property that borders that city street?
No, just that there will be access to a city street, but none of the private property on the other side of Valverde is being annexed with this.
Great. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, yes, so there's no extension or plan width increase of the road or something?
Not at this time.
You also had a question on the water, right, George?
Yeah, a little bit of concern with regard to the drainage. It doesn't, not on so much 361 Valverde, but at 365 Valverde, we've got a little bit of a water retention issue there now. So I think there's some concerns, and that's what the majority of concerns are from some of the neighbors with regard to any flow down. It's all flowed downhill, which goes to the creek, which we're fine with from a developer standpoint. I'm used to dealing with that as well. So just as long as it's, you know, captured and maintained and diverted correctly, I think everybody's, at least that would, you know, put all of us at peace of mind.
Sure. The next card I have is Jose Herrera. And just after that, we have Pat Watson.
Do you mind if I help them?
Sure.
We are neighbors, so I own the 379 already, right with the creek road by. My concern is all the water come from that subdivision. Don't come to affect my property, because I'm right on the edge of the creek. But that's really my big concern. Don't have more about the water. So I think what his biggest concern was when we talked was under the road there's.
Mayor, if we could have a public speaker speak into the microphone?
Sorry. I think his biggest concern was, there's a culvert that runs right underneath the road of Valverde, and it runs right along the side of his building. But it stops right at the front edge of it. And then it's just, you know, a regular dugout culvert. And I think he's concerned that the majority of the water is going to be diverted through that one culvert or two culverts, and that if it floods, it'll go into his building. So that was his biggest concern as it related to the direction of flow and, you know, how much was going to be coming down through there.
Thanks. Clint, do you want to take it?
Sure, and Mr. Cooper might be able to speak to this as well, but the development for the subdivision is required to meet all the City of Waco drainage requirements, which basically means that post-development has to be equal to or less than pre-development, and not impact anybody downstream as far as additional water. So what you'll see on that Exhibit D that shows the layout for the subdivision, there's some larger tracts. I believe there's at least 2 areas for detention ponds that will provide detention for the subdivision and then release water back out at pre-development rates once it's developed.
So Clint, that should allow the gentleman's building not having water down the side of his building or being flooded or water being diverted through those.
Correct.
Okay.
It will not be
The retention pond
additional
will be
water
there.
than what's there now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to have that on record we also live right near where they put the brand new bridge in at the corner of Spiegelville and 84, which TxDOT just did the same engineering, and it flooded last week, and that whole intersection was underwater. So I think it's just with the amount of rain we've had over the past year, which has been significant, that was his biggest concern, and ours as well. But we don't get as much of it as he does, being the diversion runs right down the side of his building. So,
Thank you for those comments. The next card we have is Pat Watson.
And as she's approaching, let me ask the question, City Manager. I believe if for the record, if anybody needs translation, there's someone here that can do that. Is that correct?
I believe we do have somebody. Of course, we'd prefer notice, but
Correct.
I believe we could scramble and get it worked out.
Awesome, thank you.
Ms. Watson, could you say your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Pat Watson at 1365 Valverde Road, McGregor. And from what I can tell from my other Valverde neighbors is I'm the only one that received this little postcard that tells me they're wanting voluntary annexation of 442.35 acres located along Valverde Road and further located within Waco's extraterritorial jurisdiction, case ANX-21-2. Apparently there was an earlier meeting planned. I never got a card for that. This card was received about a week ago regarding the meeting tonight. So, wanting to be a good neighbor, but like a woman, I have a million questions. I have nothing that tells me where these 442.35 acres are, and I am part of the B.B. Baxter survey, so rather than take up a lot of time this evening with your meeting, I would like to request another possibility to meet with the builder and with the city, whoever I need to see a map, have it in writing of what is expected. But at this time, I don't have enough information to give a voluntary annexation approval until I know more about it.
Well, and to clarify, Clint, why don't you take a stab at providing some clarification to Ms. Watson with regard to both where this is located and probably, I would assume one of the things that might put you most at ease is that your property is not being annexed at this time.
Well, I don't like at this time.
Well,
I'm
Just
sorry,
leave it
but
off.
I need it
Leave
in
it off.
writing, never.
Well, I will say that the way that the state law works currently is that cities, really the only way cities can annex property is through a voluntary annexation, or which is a petition or a vote of the majority of the people in that area. So the request is from Kim Cooper and a couple other property owners of the acreage that wraps around McGregor Airport that's associated with the West End addition for voluntary annexation. Any further annexation based on the current state law would have to be voluntarily requested by other property owners. At some point in the future, the state law changes.
So said otherwise, unless state law changes, your property can't be annexed without your approval.
But it's not telling me exactly what part of my property is part of this 442.35.
Clint, do you have
Yeah, so we're required to send all the property owners within 200 feet of the request a notice saying that it's been requested, but none of your property is part of the annexation.
Okay, but why did I receive this card?
Because you own property within 200 feet of the property that's being requested to be annexed.
Right, but within that 200 feet of the roadway access, and I'm not trying to be a difficult neighbor for the building that's going on across Valverde, but I do consider it rural. I do consider it a county road, not a city road. I'm not looking for streetlights and utilities and what have you, and I don't understand from this description what happens with the annexation of, now I'm hearing that it goes to the city, and what happens as far as widening or the bar ditches changing, and again, the water issues that have already been described by some of the neighbors on the west side that just spoke. So again, I'm not trying to take up time.
No, you're fine.
But I would like to have something for my protection in writing that I will not find out in my later years, and I'm already late, that I have something to contend with, and I am the sole owner, the sole survivor, and I want to protect what I have.
We can give you the maps. This is first reading. There'll be a second reading, so there'll be another opportunity, so we can make sure we have all the information provided to you before.
I'm not trying to ask for it tonight. I'm just saying I would like to meet with y'all at
Do
some
you mind explaining the difference between a first reading and a second reading that could explain to Ms. Watson the opportunity to get this information before we vote again?
Sure. Ms. Watson, ordinances in Waco require 2 readings, and tonight is the first reading. And so even though council will be passing it, and will be passing it on first reading, it's not truly law until it's passed on second reading. And that will not happen until September 21st, 2021. And so there will be some time for Clint and for the developer to get with you to explain what is being annexed before this actually becomes law.
Should you have any further questions, you could come before our final vote on this matter.
Thank you. I would like to do that. And so at this moment, you do not have my voluntary annexation, and we'll figure it all out before the 21st of September, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. The developer and Clint will try to get to you before, get in front of you before the 21st of September.
We're actually having it on the second reading, it's going to be the first meeting in October.
Oh, okay. So that's even more time. I'm sorry. What John Patterson, who's one of the attorneys in our office, just reminded me was that this second reading isn't actually happening till October. So we'll have plenty of time to get with you, and Mr. Cooper and Clint can show you the maps.
Okay. Will that be a phone or written notice that we have time to meet?
If you can leave your contact information on
I
the
did.
call, we can set up.
I did on the
Okay.
card coming in.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming tonight, Ms. Watson, we appreciate that. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? If not, I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Yes.
Fairfield. Yes. Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-574.
Honorable Mayor, 574 through 584 are all special permits with the same findings for approval, so I was going to read those into record first and then go through the individual cases. The findings for approval that the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the proposed use is compatible with appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it is located, that the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception, and that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for proposed use. This is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Cameron and Danielle Philgreen for a short-term rental type 1 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 12, Block 22 of the Highland Edition, known as 3201 Colcord Avenue. By a vote of 10-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings I just read in the record, which are required for granting a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? And I do have one card, which is Cameron Philgreen, who's available for questions. Any questions? Anyone else here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabino.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-575.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Samantha Barnes for a short-term rental type 1 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 3, Block 21, the Station Creek Edition, known as 805 Four Gates Drive. By a vote of 10-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting of a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Fairfield. Sabino.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-576.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Aaron Slade for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 17 and 18, Block B of the Pewitt BA Edition, known as 3312 Pewitt Drive. By a vote of 7-3, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We'll open a public hearing, and I believe we have an someone who registered, Aaron Slape. Am I saying that name right?
It was just me, and I was just here for questions, but I did it online, so.
Very good. Any questions? Anyone? If not, anyone else here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Aye.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabino.
No.
Meek.
Yes. Motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-577.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Lindsay Bedner for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 5, Block 2, the Bluebonnet Cliffs Edition, known as 3313 Cliffdale Drive. By a vote of 8-2, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting of a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? If not, we'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? And I do have a card for Ms. Bedner.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Bedner, and I live at 3313 Cliffdale Drive, and I'm the sole property owner. Back in 2019, my application for a short-term rental type 2 permit was denied due to neighbor opposition and a petition with 15 signatures. Since then, I have went door to door and spoke to all of my neighbors and addressed their concerns, answered their questions, in some cases even provided documentation from the Planning Commission. To my knowledge, there is only one neighbor who is still opposed to this permit, and he lives on a completely different street than me, and only a quarter of his property is within the 200-foot buffer. This gentleman has said that the neighborhood is quiet. However, I would tend to disagree with him because a portion of my backyard faces a portion of Lakeshore Drive that has five lanes. My home is an asset, and as a matter of self-interest, I do not want it trashed. In addition, I do not want my STR to be a nuisance to neighbors, and for that reason, I will take every precaution possible to prevent any issues in the neighborhood. There will also be a strict guest screening process in place, as well as responsible management. As part of the guest vetting process, there will be a telephone screening, review of guest ratings on Airbnb or VRBO, and a background check of the primary renter. As part of responsible management, all guests will be required to sign a contract outlining property rules and will also be required to provide a security deposit. In addition, cameras will be located at the entrances and the exits, and the use of party squasher and/or noise aware will be utilized. Party squasher measures the number of mobile devices on the property, and noise aware measures the decibels indoors and outdoors. Since 2019, I have performed significant renovations on the property, including fixing the foundation, repairing termite damage, and just an overall renovation of the home. If approved for the permit, I would continue to upgrade the home by reinvesting the profits. I understand there is a housing shortage in Waco, and because of that, the city is hesitant to approve more short-term rentals. However, even if I am disapproved for this permit, my home will not become available to the public because it is my primary residence. I am a Waco resident, and I have been for over 2 years. I thank you for your time, and please let me know if I can answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
No, I just want Ms. Bender to breathe.
Yeah,
Breathe.
I don't like public speaking.
I'm like, whew. I'm leaning over to try to give you some better energy because I was like, you all right, baby? Just breathe, okay?
Any more questions? We appreciate you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? If not, then we will close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to say I like the method, Lindsay, that you went through where you didn't have the neighborhood consent or approval or buy-in, but you took the trouble to go around and talk to the folks and turn them around. I applaud that. But yeah, I fully support your permit request here.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I'm very skeptical of type 2 and an R1B. I realize you applied before we shut that down, but the catalog of things that you listed that you've done to make sure that this doesn't change the character of your neighborhood is very persuasive. So thank you, and I appreciate all the good work, as Councilmember Holmes said you did with your neighbors.
Agreed. Please pull the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Borderood.
Yes.
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 Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-578.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Camille and Blake West for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as lots 4B and 5, Block 8 of the Dean Edition, known as 2710 Cumberland. By a vote of 8-2, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on findings required for granting a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We will close the public hearing. Sorry, we will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Now we'll close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please pull the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Borderood.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-579.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting an amendment to the special permit to Beasley Construction LLC for a short-term rental type 3 in O2 zoning district on property described as Lot 14, Block A, the Mann subdivision known as 511 South 10th Street. By a vote of 9-0 with one abstention, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the amendment based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing, and I have one card and I think it's Alexander from Beasley Construction. Any questions?
I do, Mr. Alexander. How has the dialogue with the surrounding neighbors been about this particular project?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Sure. How has the dialogue with the surrounding neighbors been about this particular project?
We have a neighbor behind us that we've had a noise complaint or that I've had noise complaints with animals and stuff, but other than that, I've had nothing that I know of.
Okay. So none
Nothing be negative that I know of.
none have approached you about not in favor of the short-term rentals here in this area? No? Okay.
State your name and address for the record.
Alexander Beasley, 424 Oriental Road, Waco, Texas.
And then, Mr. Beasley, do you mind, how long have you been operating that short-term rental there at that location?
About a year and a half.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thanks. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
To me, I understand this is a little bit of a unique one in that there is a current operating short-term rental license, and there's been significant construction to keep it operating as a short-term rental. I realize this is a different request than normal. Instead of they're saying, may I operate, they're saying, may I transfer operation of this to a different ownership. I think that's a different class. Hearing no public opposition here, I'm convinced that this is appropriate to go forward.
I'm going to agree with you mainly because the way this structure is built, it would take tremendous renovation to make it a long-term leasing or ownership type of structure. I hate that it's transferring so quickly or that it's coming up so quickly because I mean, maybe just this year, first of the year, approved this one. But with understanding that it's not a lot we can do with it in this way is probably the sole reason that I'm going to vote to approve.
I'm going to land on the other side of the coin for my council members only because I have had constituents in the area that have reached out to me with concerns about A, this operating, now B, switching the owner of the operations. And so because of that and the concerns that constituents have there, I will be in opposition of this public hearing.
Thank you for the discussion, and please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabita.
No.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-580.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Rundle Group LLC for short-term rental type 3 in O3 zoning district on property described as Lot 15, Block 28, Glenwood Edition, known as 2326 Austin Avenue. By a vote of 8-2, the Plan Commission recommended approval that the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion. Oh, that's not true. I'm sorry. We did have a card on this one. Mr. Rundle, are you here to speak on that? I'll reopen the public hearing. And Mr. Rundle, would you like to speak?
No, I only had to answer any questions or anything.
Any questions for Mr. Rundle? We will close that public hearing then, and I will ask for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Fairfield. Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-581.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Beltex Assets 3 Columbus LLC for a short-term rental type 3 and 03 zoning district on property described as Lot 20, Block 2, the Van Hall Edition, known as 2200 Columbus Avenue. By a vote of 9-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
I will say, I guess I'm just being the difficult one today, but it really is, short-term rentals are very unique in that, you know, you definitely have to take each one on a case-by-case basis. I find it a little bit more difficult to approve an STR when it is in the confines or in the perimeter of an apartment complex or duplexes or multi-level living area, and so I just think as when you're temporarily renting an apartment or duplex or something, you don't think of the complex next to you having a neighbor every single weekend or every single week, and so I think that just complicates things more, and so for that reason I will be not voting for this.
Councilmember Sabido, I don't disagree with you, and I second it so we can continue the conversation, because I think it's one that is important. When we have had units like this before, you know, 5 is the max that you can have, and the question I raised in work session were they all in one space? If you're relegating to one building or something, I can maybe understand that, but without knowing, and I don't know that it's possible to know, because I think that they would happen per vacancies, and that's just a bit too random for me, because I know it's not just, I know we have some concerns, and we've made mention about the school, the units that are around our colleges and universities, but, you know, if I'm a 45-year-old woman, I don't know that I want, you know, a rotating process like that in when I've set aside to live in a particular living area. I know how people feel about homes and houses and things, and this is so complex because it is the same thing that we're talking about every time, but it's so very different, and each place is different. I don't know that I can put a finger on what is right and what isn't, and that's why we changed the policy.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
It's why we changed the policy, and if we can get through this meeting, ooh, the policy's changed. But it does make it difficult, and it makes it more, you know, to really have to go through it with a finite comb to see what is acceptable and what isn't. And I don't know that I have enough information to vote in the affirmative, because if it was, okay, so building A is gonna be our short-term rental building, then that's one thing. But if you've got 1 in A, 1 in B, 1 in C, D, and E, then that's a whole nother conversation, and it's gonna be random, and it's gonna be rotating. And because we approved this today, it can be rotating for,
As long as the permit is good for it, yeah.
Yeah, for me on this one, I've lived here before and many years ago, but from my perspective, I hear everything everybody's saying, and I think that it's funny because unlike Hector, with all respect, for me in an apartment complex, it feels more logical, and I just trust our permit and the requirements that are in the permit to make sure that people are kept safe, that it is, you know, following the rules that our planning department has strategically set to make sure that the concerns that someone neighboring might have, and so for that reason, I'm comfortable with this one.
so, not to, and I see you there, Councilmember Bordereau. So because the position is more temporary in nature. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
That as opposed to a house.
Yeah, I
You know,
think
I'm not a 30-year
forever.
mortgage on this. I've got a 6-month or 12-month lease, and so I know going in as a renter that
You never know who's going to be next
A or
door to
B
you.
selection
I
is
get
going
it's
to be.
different,
Okay, I
but
got you.
yeah.
I got you.
I get it's different.
I hear you.
I've just got a quick question and then a comment to our city attorney. Jennifer, for all of our public hearings, we've got to have 4 votes for a motion to pass. Is that correct when we have 5 members up here?
That's right. So for anything to pass council, you have to have a 4 in the affirmative, those qualified and serving. So tonight, just like any other night, for this to pass, it would take 4.
Okay. And so it sounds like essentially, I'm probably going to vote for this, just it makes sense to me, but I think it underscores to Councilmember Barefield's point that I think we've landed on a pretty good compromise because we haven't had one of these in a while in terms of where the ordinance is. And I'm very satisfied with the ordinance that we came up with and that the city management and city attorney's office crafted. I realize we're kind of cleaning up what's left, and this is someone's livelihood and someone's business venture here, and so I don't mean to make light of it, but I do feel like we did a pretty good job in coming up with what we came up with. So.
Any other discussion? I'll just end by saying I am thankful for that, the new rules that we're about to implement. All right, please poll the council.
Yes, sir. Holmes?
Aye.
Porteroo?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
DeVito?
No.
Meek?
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-582.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Beltex Assets 3 Tinsley LLC for a short-term rental type 3 in our O2 zoning district on property described as Lot 25, Block 1 in the Tinsley Edition, known as 715 Cleveland Avenue. By a vote of 9-1, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? If not, we will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, we will close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Once again, I'll say, this being a predominantly student apartment complex, I would find it very hard as a parent to move my child to an apartment complex somewhere in a different city, thinking that the majority of the people that are living in this complex are going to be students or students that attend the university, and then to come to find out that my son or my daughter's next door neighbor could be a different one every single weekend, and so I would struggle with that, and for that reason I am voting against this.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Aye.
Yes.
Fairfield?
No.
DeVito?
No.
Meek?
Yes, I believe that motion fails.
That's right. That special permit has not been approved.
We will now move to public hearing 2021-583.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Michael and Aaron Ruiz for a short-term rental type 3 in O2 zoning district on property described as Lot 4, Block 1, the Hillside Village Edition, known as 1500 West Lakeshore Drive, Unit 103. By a vote of 9-1, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting of a special permit per section 28122 of the zoning ordinance.
Is there, are there any questions for staff? If not, we will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes?
Aye.
Porteroo?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-584.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to 629 South 5th Street LLC for a short-term rental type 3 on O2 zoning district on property described as lots 14 and B, Block B of the Huff Harris addition, known as 629 South Fifth Street, Units A, B, and C. By a vote of 8 to 2, the Plan Commission recommends approval of the request based on the findings required for granting of a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff?
Hey, Clint, so with this particular complex, it's a little different because there's only 3 living areas in this complex, right? And those 3 are being proposed, or the applicant wants to rent them all out as short-term rentals, but there's a total of 3, and those are the 3.
That's correct.
So no other person lives in that complex, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido. Meek.
The motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing. Is that all the public
That
hearings?
was all of them.
Whew, okay, sorry. I was on a loop there. Next is our consent agenda. The following resolutions were pulled from the consent agenda. Resolution 2021-607. So is there a motion on Resolution 2021-607?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Aye.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that motion carries. There's one more resolution.
Mayor, I just wanted to point out to y'all, Resolution 2021-605, y'all have a revised resolution. It can stay on consent agenda, but all that was revised is the number 16 for the fire station was changed to 15.
And I'm going to pull that one from the consent agenda. This is the Callan Village Fire Station one, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You don't have-
It is. It's the same one.
I'm going to pull that one from the consent agenda. So is there a motion on Resolution 2021-605?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes. Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield. Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
I'm going to abstain from that one, and we'll move to the consent agenda, which will contain Resolution 2021-585 through 2021-626, except for 607 and 605. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion for approval on consent agenda.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield. Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. That motion carries, and we'll move on to ordinance 2021-627.
An ordinance establishing administrative departments of the City of Waco, Texas, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a savings clause, providing for an effective date, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to council on first reading.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2021-628.
An ordinance amending Section 1876A of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas to increase the number of positions in the Emergency Operations Classification of the Waco Fire Department by increasing the number of firefighters grade 1 from 78 to 81, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a savings clause, providing for inclusion in the code, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to council on first reading.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Porter.
Yes.
Fairfield. Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to 2021-629.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Waco, Texas, approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee, ACSC, and Atmos Energy Corporation Mid-Tex Division regarding the company's 2021 rate review mechanism filing, declaring existing rates to be unreasonable, adopting tariffs that reflect rate adjustments consistent with the negotiated settlement, finding the rates to be set by the attached settlement tariffs to be just and reasonable in the public interest, approving an attached exhibit establishing a benchmark for pensions and retiree medical benefits, approving an attached exhibit regarding amortization of regulatory liability, requiring the company to reimburse Atmos City Steering Committee's reasonable rate-making expenses, determining this ordinance is passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, adopting a savings clause, declaring an effective date, and requiring delivery of this ordinance to the company and the Atmos City Steering Committee's legal counsel. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on August 17, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Helms. Porterwood. Yes. Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabita. Meek.
Motion carries, and we'll move to our hearing of visitors. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we provide an opportunity for the public to present concerns or address issues that are not matters for consideration listed on the agenda. Council is unable to conduct discussion, but will listen, ask staff to look into concerns, and provide follow-up. Please provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you are unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. And I have several cards. The first is Kelly Atkinson from the Cove.
Hi. Thank you, council and mayor and city staff for your time today. Thank you also to Deidre Emerson and Renisha Hudnell and Siobhan Moore for their leadership at the city. I'm Kelly Atkinson, and I'm representing the Cove, and we are at 524 West Waco Drive. I get the vibes up here. It's nerve-wracking. Come on. Just gotta breathe. But first of all, I really wanted to thank you all for your investment in our city, especially over the last year and a half. There definitely aren't words for what it's taken to get us here, but thank you. Our city is definitely flourishing through this pandemic, and I know that it takes a lot, so we appreciate that. Through all these challenges, I know that each of you are committed to supporting our most vulnerable citizens, and chief among those are families and youth experiencing homelessness. As hard as it has been for the city to engage in the transition at Oak Lodge, it is a reminder of how many folks in our city live on the brink of homelessness each day. It's also a reality check just for how hard it is to find affordable housing in Waco. Just this year, the Cove has covered the cost for over 1,000 nights of emergency housing for youth in hotels because they couldn't find a place to stay through our homeless response system or the private market. The average wait time for housing is 1 to 2 years, and the private market affordable housing is in no way meeting the level of demand. But that's not news to any of us here. But what could be considered new is the fact that we have an unprecedented opportunity to do better. And that is using the influx of COC dollars that we have from HUD. Our Continuum of Care, or COC, is a HUD-designated entity, and we used to receive $1.1 million each year through HUD to our COC. And that money went out as grants to our homeless response services in the heart of Texas. The Heart of Texas Homeless Coalition is currently the lead agency for these funds, with other organizations running aspects like coordinated housing wait list and data management. But when we were awarded the $2.2 million Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant in 2019, we doubled the annual allocation from HUD to our region, and now with a special emphasis on youth. Our COC budget is now over $2.1 million and is the single largest annual renewable funding source to address housing and homelessness in our community. However, there is no viable management structure to oversee the use of these funds. I know that the city's 22 budget has been passed. However, I ask you to consider a mid-year budget adjustment to invest in a continuum of care department within the city of Waco. Okay, I get it now, it's the buzzer. Shoot. Our city staff are currently developing proposals for your consideration, and I believe that there could be some minimally viable structures for the coming fiscal year with a tiered approach over the next 3 to 5. And having a COC department at the city would provide oversight for the funds that are going out to our system, allow for data-driven decisions, and overhaul our long waitlist process, and provide person power for events like Oak Lodge. I think there's really no other entity within our city that can provide this leadership, and so we ask you to consider that.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
The next card we have is for Dr. Alan Northcutt.
Alan Northcutt, and you should have a handout already. During 2021, climate change impacts have been on display: worsening heat waves, droughts, crop damage, flooding, wildfires, and the hottest July in human history. At the recent release of an IPCC report, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres remarked, "The assessment report 6 is code red for humanity. If we combine forces now, we can avert climate catastrophe. But as today's report makes clear, there is no time for delay and no room for excuses." Now, with this background, I just received the power switch letter from Waco and the state, and to me, this is a clear example of delay. The letter and the linked website explain how citizens may save money on electricity, but in 2021, there is no mention of choosing renewable energy. Therefore, I propose that the city add an additional statement or page to the power switch letter with a statement such as, "The city of Waco is committed to protecting the environment by buying renewable energy and transitioning its fleet to electric vehicles. But the city cannot accomplish this alone. We need the help of citizens and businesses. Although some of you must focus only on cost of power, we strongly encourage the purchase of 100% renewable energy if possible. Some plans are priced competitively with dirty electricity. By choosing clean energy, you help the city preserve a livable climate." End statement. Now, why should the city do this? Number one, the gold standard of climate science says we only have 9 years to cut emissions 45%, 9 years left. Given this timeline, we must use every opportunity for progress. Now, the federal government is acting but cannot do this alone. All jurisdictions must act. Number three, the electricity sector is the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S., after transportation, of course. Number four, the city government switch to renewables was very positive, but represents only a fraction of total power-associated emissions in Waco. Citizens and businesses must also transition to clean energy. Number five, saving money will mean little on a degraded planet. And number six, if such a statement was included with the power switch letter, the cost to the city will be negligible, and I know cost is always an issue. So I hope the city will consider these comments and consider amending or adding an additional statement advancing renewable energy to everyone who gets that power switch letter. And my handout also has some more important climate updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Northcutt. The last card we have for this evening is Ephraim Herring. Mr. Herring, is he here?
I don't see him.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak during the hearing of visitors? If not, we will close the hearing of visitors, but before adjourning, we will recess for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 7:09. Oh, is he? Okay, sorry.
Here he is.
We will reopen the hearing of visitors for Mr. Herring.
I'm gonna make this nice and brief, and this all started back in March of 2003. You notice in Waco they had a lot of homelessness. In March 2003, 1046 Chestnut was condemned by the city of Waco. That was my mother's house. So I found out because my mom was very proud because she didn't have no help from her children. So I found out about it because I was working there as a trooper. And she broke down and told me about it when y'all condemned the house. So the family got together and we decided to build a house. Well, the family didn't really, she didn't want them, so I decided to build a house. So we'll start. She signed on to a program y'all got started right now where they said they'll help her fix a house. Didn't do that. Didn't happen. 2000 didn't happen. She didn't have it. And it was hurting her so bad to tell me that it didn't happen. But I found out about it. So I came in, took all my savings, and been saving for 40 years because I was going to come back. I wasn't never coming back to Waco. But I came back to help her out. So we started this house project. I told Mr. Ford that I was starting an investigation July 12th, 2018, 1,400 hours in the basement of the city hall. So let me find what I tell you. I told him in October, I found some very disturbing stuff. So let me break it down to what I found. On October 15, 2015 until May 16, 2016, there was put into your utility department a grant, a request for a sewer line. It was denied because I was told that the water line for 1044 Chestnut, the property I own, come across 1046 Chestnut. I was born and raised on Chestnut in 1962, 1220 Chestnut. First time I put the died at 1220 Chestnut. So I told your city manager, I told your utility department, I told your city engineer, I told your planning department, I told your code enforcement department, I told your building official, they were wrong. They could not show me a map if you just were to they still denied it. So I lost a $3,000 contract, I lost a contract with Woody Butler, which cost me another $3,500. That's for digging up the line and showing them that their maps were wrong. So, I was in Washington doing an investigation and all that, so I said, okay, I'm gonna give you one. That's $3,500. So, come up in October, so Woody Butler didn't want to do no during the argument, so y'all recommended in Neighborworks Waco, so there shouldn't be no problem at all, because y'all are part of Neighborworks Waco. I've seen that. So from 12/16, when y'all signed that documentation, when city manager and your city attorney signed documentation on December 16th, 2016, that documentation that y'all signed was in violation of your own departmental guide. There's no documentation bypassing. Then also I found out from October 15, 2015 to May 16, 2015, there's no city ordinance. When you approved the house on July 24th, 2017, it was in violation of your ordinance code 28094, your own code. So my question is, you said that was gonna be followed up. Y'all, everything. Devers told me it's gonna be followed up. You done told me to be followed up. You know what? There's none of y'all calling me and follow up on this stuff. So I did open records request. And right now I'm still waiting from the Attorney General's office on my answers on several questions. Because what I'm finding right now, it seems like it's retaliation for East Waco. Y'all bless that.
We will close the public hearing, and before adjourning this meeting, we will recess for executive session once more, as read into the record by our city secretary at 7:13 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the city council will go into executive session. Just lost my screen. We'll go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. 1, attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, Texas Governor's Orders GA-38 and GA-39. 2, real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072. 3, economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. And we are now in executive session at 7:14 p.m.
The business session at 7:50 p.m. and there being no further business, we will adjourn at 7:50 p.m. Thank you, everybody.